Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for the JoJo Lands Chapter 10 review titled The Hustle Part 1, which is by far the most action-packed and classic JoJo stand fighting from the parts so far, as we begin to fight against this rock-like enemy that's been stalking us from the beginning, and whose abilities only become more dangerous and captivating the more we see. So lots to discuss and break down in the final chapter of the year, but before we jump right into things, there's also been a lot of other new JoJo Lands content recently, such as Volume 2, which released this month, whose cover features Jodio in his best color scheme, alongside Dragona holding onto the rock in diamond. And in typical JoJo fashion, the chapter titles of Volume 2 have been renamed, previously Jungle Warfare, but now Mount Hualalai, Cat-Sized Parts 1 through 3. So Cat-Size is the official stand name, which is in reference to the song of the same name by Suzy Q, as well as we got a stand description page that clears up a lot of the questions surrounding them. So as I previously theorized, this is one stand shared by a group of wild animals similar to Rat from Part 4, as these cats are a unique species native to the island of Hawaii, and it's implied that they all share this ability. So that does answer the question of who the stand user was, but I still feel like they'll be mentioned again in this current arc, as they also seem to be interested in the lava rock, snooping around Rohan's villa, attacking the Gain, and being used by the current enemy to threaten Jodio. But if they are never mentioned again, I guess we can just assume the enemy was using them, or the villa was in their territory. And lastly, for Volume 2, there was a really dope official MMV release to promote it that features narration from Mamoru Miyano, a very popular voice actor and who plays Dio Brando in the upcoming Phantom Blood musical. So the promo was just insanely well done, music, visuals all on point, and it's nice to see JoJo is staying up to date with the industry and doing special things like this to celebrate and promote it. So hopefully we get more of these as the series continues. And now we can finally get into Chapter 10. Starting with the cover page, we have Jodio and Pakko posted up with dark clouds in the background, foreshadowing events later in the chapter, as well as a promotion for the Phantom Blood musical, which will be performed early next year for those interested in that. And turning the page, we are welcomed back to the story by a clean double page spread, the first of many throughout this chapter, picking up where we left off with the imposter Pakko's attack on Jodio. And for the first 16 pages, we have a beautifully choreographed fight sequence between Pakko and the rock person that flows extremely well with fluid panel layouts, as we see Pakko doing the hustle to attack and defend himself, blocking with a food tray, throwing a chair with his obliques, and continuing to prove himself as the brawler of the group, who has done nothing but continue to impress me with his capabilities and use of a seemingly basic stand. Like when Pakko is caught in the hilt of the sword, he grabs onto it with the hustle, punches himself, and sends the vibrations through the sword and into the enemy, twisting their muscles almost like a muscle cramp, and then immediately grabs them by the throat. So the way this fight has been playing out and Pakko's use of the hustle is almost giving me Hamon vibes with the hand-to-hand combat, manipulating muscles, transferring energy, which was all really fun to read. Even in my live reaction, I was like, wow, people are actually fighting again. This is awesome. I almost forgot this is what Araki does best. And it's right when Pakko grabs the enemy, we see their stand, which allows them to project parts of their body into the clouds, using tricks of perspective to reach and attack through them, which sounds kind of complicated, but we'll come back to the ability more later, as I feel like I have a pretty good explanation for what's really going on here. So during this initial fight, we see a lot more into who the enemy truly is. First off, after Pakko gives them a few good punches, we finally see their face, sporting heavy eyeliner and a spiky shag mullet with a slight resemblance to David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust character, having similar hair and facial features, puffiness around the bottom lip, and one of Bowie's most popular songs during that era was Starman, with the chorus, "There's a starman waiting in the sky," and this character coincidentally has the ability to literally go into the sky, so maybe a connection there, and I'm curious to see if their name or stand will have any reference to Bowie. Also during the fight, Pakko questions what's going on with the enemy's face, and remarks the particles weren't crumbling away like we initially thought, but rather are floating around their face and have a sand-like texture, also referring to them as rock fragments with different colors. So Araki is continuing to allude to the rock humans quite heavily in this chapter, as later on, Pakko also says his skin feels like coarse sand and questions if he's even human at all. And I'll be honest, Araki had me going for a while, as it really seemed like that's where things were heading. Either a return of the rock humans or a unique altered version of them in Hawaii, like a lowland form or lava rock humans, as there seemed to be two completely separate abilities at play here: rock-like skin that can change the user's face and crumble away, and being able to reform within clouds. But I really do think this is Araki just doing a bit of trolling and misdirecting the reader when it's actually just one ability. Because if we kick it back to 7th grade science class, really what are clouds? It's water vapor that turns to liquid when cooling down that find particles in the air to condense onto. This can be dust, pollen, small ice shards, or salt particles, which then create cloud droplets that float in the air around each other and when grouped together create clouds. And if you recall, Paco had said that all of the rock fragments were different colors, almost like a rainbow. And how is a rainbow formed? It's caused by refraction. When light enters a cloud or water droplet, it slows down, bounces around, and comes out at a different angle and wavelength, producing a different color. So if this enemy has the ability to turn himself into clouds, it makes sense that these floating fragments around his face are actually cloud droplets refracting light, as how else would they just be floating, and could even form together and manipulate light in such a way it alters his appearance. And they feel like sand because it's vapor condensed onto dust, dirt, or really any other particles in the air, which seems like a very Araki-like ability, with many stands being based off of natural mechanisms. So if this is an integrated type stand, meaning the user's body is made out of cloud droplets, this would explain pretty much everything in this chapter, as there are moments where their body is translucent. You can see their shape but also right through them, or when they completely break down and reform somewhere else, or they create illusions in the air, all being cloud fragments manipulating light through refraction. So while he looks similar to a rock human, if you consider what's actually happening, it doesn't add up, as being made of stone wouldn't really contribute to any of these abilities. But coming back to the chapter, Paco gets in another punch, avoiding the enemy's cloud attack, sending them flying under some debris, and tells Jodio to wake up and just stick a band-aid on your throat or something, which hilariously works and saves his life. So I've mentioned before how Araki is quite inconsistent when it comes to characters healing from their wounds and the seriousness of damage, but honestly, at this point, it seems like he's almost making fun of the idea of being realistic, so I'm willing to suspend my disbelief to enjoy the campiness of the story at times, as long as this isn't overused. For example, this chapter ends with Dragona being stabbed through the neck. If that wound is also healed as simply as a band-aid, that's pretty lazy writing, and removes the impactfulness of every dramatic moment to follow. So this could be a problem if Araki continues to rely on just hurting his characters as the only means to create drama or suspense, as the story is kinda conditioning us to assume that every wound isn't as bad as it looks, or that we're being played. Because it turns out Jodio's cut didn't go that deep, so maybe Dragona being stabbed missed every artery. Overall, not a big deal. This has always been a thing in JoJo. It's just more recognizable when reading monthly, as chapters often rely on cliffhangers. So while Jodio is putting on his band-aid, we switch over to Dragona and Usagi, who are leaving the watch store and got a bit wasted off of Rohan's liquor, but quickly need to sober up as Paco tells them they're all under attack, and Jodio claims it's the Mafia, that's what the imposter said, but Paco disagrees, saying this guy isn't up to snuff to be mafioso. After all, Paco did kick his ass, and his knife skills only grazed Jodio's neck. However, he's still a threat and has an unknown stand. The chapter then pulls the gang's attention to a couple of side characters, Leo-kun and his girlfriend, who are walking out of the watch store with the watch that was previously attracted to Dragona. He's first really upset by this, but Usagi reminds him that this is all just a roundabout way to eventually bring it back to them and to not worry about it. And many people have pointed out that this very unique looking side character, Leo, who bought the watch, seems to be a reference to the Japanese-French painter Leonard Suguharu Fujita, who is well known for his paintings of cats. So fair to say Araki has been quite fascinated by cats as of recent. And I hate to disappoint the Joshu Nation, but unfortunately no, it looks like this is not Joshu visiting Hawaii under the alias Leo. So back in the chapter, you'll notice that Dragona can't seem to take their eyes off of the watch. Even in the middle of a fight, Dragona seems more concerned with how they're treating the watch, saying that women just stuck it on top of a napkin that's got food scraps and orange sauce on it, and that they can't stand the idea of someone getting their grubby fingerprints all over it, which shows an almost malicious level of greed coming from Dragona here, a characteristic we had already noticed when they first went to the watch store, as even though they just tested the Lava Rock's power, Dragona insisted they needed to try it in the luxury watch store, that it was absolutely necessary. And I always thought, was it really though? And now Dragona is visibly upset by how someone else who paid full price for the watch is treating it, feeling some sort of entitlement to it all because they held it close to a Lava Rock, which is kinda weird and a level of immaturity not expressed impressed by the rest of the group. And it's their greed which leads to them being attacked, as they see the watch picked up by a bird and fly towards them thinking this is all the Lavrock's power, and become blinded by the hope of it returning, not realizing that the watch is still on the woman's wrist, which everyone else seems to notice, being cautious of the enemy. And as Dragona stumbles towards the bird, reaching towards the sky, the enemy forms within the clouds, revealing that the bird and the watch were merely creations of his fragments, luring Dragona right to him, as he snatches the Lavrock from the brooch and stabs them through the neck. So from this attack, you can see how this concept of cloud droplets could explain what's happening here, as the lower half of their body is translucent, while the bird and watch seamlessly merge into their body, as the watch and bird could be cloud fragments shaped like those objects and manipulating the light they refracted. So they come back to the user's body but retain their image. So in theory, this user could appear as anything given there is a light source and reference, as he only seems to mimic things around him, which may also explain how this user has been stalking us since back at the villa. Although one thing I'm not 100% on is if the user can create clouds or uses the existing clouds, as Paco had said that the clouds he used were kilometers away. So I think the stand could be playing with perspective, something like as long as you're standing in front of or above a cloud, the enemy can reach you, similar to stands that attack within reflections. So in this panel, the cloud really is far away, but if you think of it as a 2D space, they're technically touching, pretty much like those old Deck King videos. So following this attack, the enemy tries to fade away, but Jodio uses November Rain to catch their legs, so it looks like water or rain might be a counter to their fragments. And the chapter ends with Dragona attempting to heal themselves with smooth operators performing an emergency operation. So overall, excellent chapter, probably my favorite so far. The way the stand was illustrated and the art in this chapter was just absolutely phenomenal. I think the last like 12 pages of the chapter were all double page spreads. And I also think it's just a really thoughtful ability expressed through an attention of detail from the art and writing that really gives us a chance to understand its power simply by seeing it used. And I'm continuing to anticipate learning more about this enemy's true motive, affiliation, and connection to the Lavrock, as clearly they know about it and they're trying to take it back, as we saw at the end. And since Jodio has the ability to make it rain, which is inherently connected to clouds, I think these two could have some really cool interactions between their stands. But that's all for this month and the final JoJo Lens chapter of the year. But before we go, there is some more JoJo news to cover, as December is just really a huge month for the series. So adding on to the JoJo Lens hype train, much earlier than expected, Shueisha has released Volume 1 in full color, right alongside Volume 2, which I'm sure will be available in other languages soon enough by fan translation teams, although, as per usual with the colored scans, there are some misses here, with some panels feeling a bit too neon and some odd choices for characters, although overall, I think it looks just fine, pretty damn good most of the time, but I've always preferred Araki's work in black and white, so I never felt like the quality of colors impacted the experience that much. If anything, they make the art more legible at a glance, hence why nearly every JoJo creator uses the colored pages in videos. So I think it's great that people who want to read in color will have that option, which just makes JoJo Lens more accessible to more people. And it's just a complimentary bonus, so I really can't complain about them not being absolutely perfect, and the original will always be king in my book. Also this month is the release of JoJo Magazine 3 with the Jodio Hatsune Miku cover, which also got its own animated promotion like Volume 2, and is full of content, too much to mention in this video, but some highlights were the JoJo Lens Tommy Bahama t-shirts included with the magazine, some photos of Araki during his trip to Hawaii in preparation for Part 9, absolutely goated mangaka activity, and in the second chapter of Cool Shock Old BT, Echo's Act 4 appears as some sort of robot maid. Don't ask, I don't know, I have not been reading it. And that's all for this month's JoJo Lens review. Thank you all so much for joining me once again, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone, and I can't wait to continue making content and sharing it with you all throughout 2024. Thank you all so much for watching, please like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you all real soon in the next year. Till then, peace.